Hello and welcome to Good Morning UK Have Your Say, a Force for Good's mid-morning show coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. And this is the show where we are British, we love the United Kingdom and we want to stay together. And we work to stay together. And hello to Adam, who's come in there. Good to see you, Adam, and good to see Tommy. Good stuff, guys. And good to see Bagel0101 and Harvey Valley 1 on Twitter as well. Adam, we're going to be talking about this. Sturgeon thinks she can get IndyRef 2 going without Westminster consent. Shall we take them to court? Well, a bit early in the day for that, but we're going to be talking about that shortly, Adam. Sandra, good morning to see Sandra, and Tommy Mowat and Alan Ford. How are you? We're doing very well, and we have a lot to speak about. We have a guest at the top of the hour, James from England, who's a new Union supporter, who's going to be telling us what he loves about the United Kingdom. And folks, please share this broadcast if you can. We're going to share it right now across our platforms. And if you can do so as well, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter, please retweet. If you retweet us with a positive comment, a positive quote tweet, then we can retweet you to over 26,000 people. And that will help you get your YouTube material out as well, your Twitter stuff. So please do that. Now, yes, tell us what's on your minds as well this morning, because we want to chat about that, and people will have quite a bit to say, whether it's about the crisis on the channel, whether it's about the COVID situation, whether it's about the threat of lockdowns. Give us your thoughts and let's chat about those things. While I'm talking here, I'm frantically sharing around, and this might be something I'm going to have to get somebody else to do, actually, in the future. But for now, just today, this will be the last day that I'll have to do this. Okay. Now, Sandra says she feels sick to her stomach with Nicola Sturgeon's Carry On. Now, I know exactly what you mean. However, there is good news on the horizon, and we're going to try to give you that good news. Give us the good news. Give us the good news. Scottish Johnny says Scotland is a country, this is on TikTok, and wants to look after itself. Well, we certainly do, and the best way of looking after ourselves is to be part of a bigger structure called the United Kingdom. Mark, time to push back hard against Sturgeon and company. Maintain our UK, says Mark. Marjorie, good morning to you. Tommy there says Blackford is mad. Well, he is an angry man, isn't he? And I was talking to somebody else, and we'll probably have this chat with our guest at the top of the hour who's from England, just the extent to which people in the rest of the United Kingdom get such a bad impression of the Scots when they see people like Ian Blackford. Because what do these people do? It's like they're just complaining. You know, they're not proclaiming, they're complaining. They should set up a band and just call themselves the Complainers. Complaining for 500 years. Hi everyone, good to see Catherine being a guest on our show before. Well, Scottish Johnny on TikTok says that he wants independence as soon as possible. I'm afraid you're going to have patience, Scottish Johnny, because that's not coming around anytime soon, I'm very glad to say. Alan says, I laugh at Sturgeon about independence. Independence in my eyes means going it alone as a country, not jumping into bed with the corrupt European Union. Isn't that absolutely so true? And isn't that the contradiction at the heart of the Scottish nationalist point of view? you know, they think they've got more in common with a trading bloc that we as a UK have been attached to for 30 years than they do with the literal own families who live a few miles south of them. It's really crazy, you know. It's absolutely crazy when you look like from at something like an atlas or look at the latest picture from a space station and you see how small the United Kingdom is, and you've got like people in each part of that United Kingdom who want to break it up into 4 or 5 separate pieces. Is really quite remarkable when you look at it that way. I mean, how many how many United Kingdoms could fit into the state of Texas, for example? Yet we have got all this squabbling going on in our tiny, tiny little island. It's so strange. It's so strange. It just speaks to the very interesting and convoluted and complicated histories that we've had through the centuries, which really should be our strength, which is what we always say. And when we wrote our wee book, we brought that narrative together. Our wee book for the Union, which you can get at our website, aforceforgood.uk. Go to the shop and you'll get that. And we'll put the link up there as well on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. This is a bestseller, and this tells you everything you need to know about the importance of keeping the United Kingdom together and looking at our history and realising that over time it has been coming together. It's not moving apart. The natural progression over the last 5,000 years since Britain began to come together socially and culturally has been towards greater union. It's not been towards breaking up. It's to the natural progression of time is union. In fact, we call the United Kingdom the great work of time because that's what it is. We are so lucky to have been British. And Richard says, quite right, Alistair, total irony that is lost on the Nats. Isn't that so? Isn't that absolutely so? Bill says quite rightly, we would be a poorer progressive country with nothing to offer. Why do the Scottish nationalists want to find out the hard way? Good question. And Bob Alicious on TikTok says the GERS figures have shown this every year, that we are stronger together. And Jambo RFC sends in some Union Jack flags there on TikTok. Fantastic. You know, our TikTok page is going amazing. Yesterday we picked up almost 200 new followers. Almost 200 new followers yesterday in the space of about 18 hours. Full credit to our TikTok curator for the amazing work that person does. Thank you very much. Bob Alicious says, independence will weaken us massively. The facts and figures show us this. So true. Adam says, have we got any unionist demonstrations coming up? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. The Smurfs annual outing, which is to say their annual slouch down the Royal Mile, is coming up on Saturday, the 25th of September. And A Force for Good and our Thin Red Line will be there on the Royal Mile to welcome the Smurfs on their annual outing and to say to them, it's great to be British. We love the United Kingdom and be grateful for what a fantastic country you live in. So that's coming up on the 25th of September. And if you want to stand with us, please message the page every way and we'll ensure that you're heard. Look like I'm breaking up a little bit, so what I'm going to do, breaking up, is I'm going to refresh the Okay, sorry about that. The technology was just breaking up there on Facebook, but we're back. Well, Pete Rossi makes a good point here. If Scotland is to be fossil fuel free by 2032 and the production of North Sea oil and gas is to be phased out, then where's the money going to come from to run an independent Scotland? Oh, and my kids are still waiting for their free bikes and laptops. Any sign of that happening? Well, where is the money to come from? Scotland's wealth comes from primarily trading with the rest of the United Kingdom. And that's possibly a good point to bring in what I want to talk about just now, which is Sturgeon and her lost cause. Okay, yesterday in the Scottish Parliament, she announced, let me bring this up so I get her words exact. She announced that, quote, "We will do so only when the COVID crisis is past, but our aim, COVID permitting, is that another referendum will be in the first half of this Parliament before the end of 2023. Now, what's that all about? You know, she's nothing if not wise and careful about these sorts of things, and strategic, okay? The next British general election is going to be on Thursday, the 2nd of May, 2024. Okay, now, what she thinks is if she can create some kind of stunt towards the end of 2023, just a few months before the British general election, which will be coming up in 2024, if she can create some kind of stunt about how we, the people of Scotland, must have another referendum, and if she can manipulate events so that she gets turned down, as she inevitably will, then she can go into the May 2024 election complaining about how the will of the people of Scotland has been denied and how it's so undemocratic. And then a lot of people will also be saying that it was England who were stopping us from getting the referendum. More of that in a minute. So she can create the circumstances where she can have this big stunt that she's complaining about by the end of 2023. She thinks that will set her up nicely to go in for maximum benefit at the British general election in 2024. This is what it's all about, okay? That's why she chose that date. Now, so what are we going to be hearing a lot about? We're already hearing it right now, but one thing we're going to be hearing a lot about is that it is England which is denying the right of Scotland to have a referendum. This is how the Scottish nationalists frame it. Now, Nicola Sturgeon might be clever enough to avoid using the E word, whether England or English, but her supporters and many of her legislators and MSPs, and certainly the media, and certainly most of the SNP supporters on social media will all be talking about England having denied Scotland a referendum, which is, of course, a complete confusion of the facts. Just to give you two examples. We read the National so that you don't have to. And there was, they've got somebody there who goes by the name of George Caravan. Believe it or not, he actually got elected as an MP for a few months, a little while ago, before the previous general election. But he says here that he's saying that in this article entitled "War on Our Sovereignty, Here Are Ways We Could Respond," he talks about the Union as being imposed by the larger nation on the smaller, regardless of the democratic wishes of the latter. So he's talking about England imposing its will on Scotland, which is not the way it's working at all. I'll tell you how it's working in a minute. We also have, just more recently, a Daily Telegraph columnist who is a supporter of the Union, pointing out that Tories must avoid getting into a position where the English are seen to be denying the Scots a democratic vote, since this will become the narrative of the nationalists. He's so true. This is Philip Johnston pointing this out. And he says it's far better to appeal to a promotion of the Union's benefits to the Scots and English alike. Well, that's certainly so. But what is also a fact is that it's not when Boris Johnson or the British government, whoever they may be, says that you can't have a second referendum, It's not England saying you can't have a second referendum. It is the British Parliament saying you can't have a referendum. And the British Parliament consists of the Scots, the English, the Northern Irish, and the Welsh. And we all went to the polls and elected our representatives to that British Parliament. So what the majority of the British Parliament says is speaking for Britain, the assembled nation, in its Parliament. So it's not England telling you you can't have a vote. It's Britain saying, guess what? Britain wants to stay together. Britain does not want to risk its own survival. Britain wants to have a future. And it is for the British Parliament to articulate that. So it's not England telling Scotland we can't have a vote. It's the British Parliament that represents the United Kingdom doing its duty, that it has a perfect legitimate and democratic right to do, and a perfect legitimate and democratic responsibility to do, which is to defend the integrity, the maintenance of the United Kingdom. It's nothing to do with England versus Scotland. This is about the British Parliament holding the UK together, which is its perfect duty and right and responsibility. And we wrote an article about that called It's Moral and Responsible to Hold the United Kingdom Together, and we'll put that link up there. And so that's the thing. Whenever you hear it said that the union is somehow held together by the bigger partner or the bigger nation, that's not the case at all. The union is held together by the Union Parliament, which itself is the result of everybody throughout the UK who votes representatives to go to the Union Parliament, whether you're for the union or not. If you are electing people to go to the Union Parliament, then everybody in the Union Parliament, whether they actually realise it or not, have a right to speak for all of the United Kingdom. That's their place to do it. And they should do it. And that's why SNP people should stand up and speak for people in England. You know, and that's why MPs from England should stand up and speak for people in Scotland. You know, if you're British, you're involved. That's the point. If you're British, you're involved. So, you know, and that's what we've been saying again in the wee book. For thousands of years, we've been coming together. Socially, culturally, regally, territorially, economically, politically, and as a consequence, we have created, in addition to Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, and Wales, we have created another country on top of that. It's called the United Kingdom, okay? Or what we like to say, Britain for short. So everybody, wherever you may be based, everybody is involved in keeping it together. If you're British, you're involved, as we always like to say. Now, coming up at the top of the hour, we have a guest who's a great guest, James from England. He's a new supporter of A Force for Good, and we're going to be talking to him about how he made the journey towards supporting A Force for Good. Ross says, here. Frankie says, 4 in 1 stronger together. Now I see my guest is in the waiting room, and we'll be bringing our guest in at 11 o'clock. Bill, don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. The best thing to do is to just switch off. Switch off. I know it's very difficult to escape Sturgeon, because the Scottish media do nothing but promote her. So the best way of doing it is just to stay away from anything that's going to wind up your blood pressure. We do that, you know. We've basically stopped reading newspapers. Not quite, because we obviously have to continue to do this job, but we've really got rid of a lot of unnecessary baggage as far as the mass media is concerned. Bob Alicious on TikTok says, independence will weaken us massively. The facts and figures show this. Bluebug 500 says, we already had a vote. We don't need another. JOJ1408 says, not going to happen. The majority don't want it. Quite right. The majority don't want it. Bob Alicious worries that Scotland is becoming more toxic with every year that passes by due to the poisonous nationalism. I know what you mean, but it's still a great country and we can still stand up and support it and promote common sense. And the commonsensical view is for the Union. Robert saying something there, not sure what you mean. He has ignored my comments for months. Excuse does not wash. We need open discussion and dialogue. I'm a big fan, but this puzzles me. Okay. Yvonne says, sick of divisive SNP. Sturgeon is a self-serving egomaniac. Richard gives us a bit of Latin. E quatuor unum from 4-1. Like it. I like it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, well, we're happy to get everybody's comments on here. There's so many comments come in. We're not always able to get everybody's comments up, but please do keep firing in your comments, and we'll try to do what we can. But remember that this is just me here on the comments. We've got somebody else. We've got another couple of people helping. Well, Robert there says, this country will end up in a civil war if we are not careful. Common people and common sense is what we need. Totally agree. Let's hope it's not going to be a civil war, that's for sure, but we do need common sense, absolutely. Does Sturgeon really want it? I think that she does want it. So many of these people, you know, especially in the SNP, especially in the backbenches, they're not really, they live in their own little bubble. The only people they ever speak to are people who agree with them, and therefore they don't understand, they don't know the other 50 to 60% of Scotland who don't want separation. So they only think that everybody thinks like them, and that leads them into promoting things like referendums, which are incredibly divisive and potentially quite dangerous economically and politically. So we've got a guest at 11 o'clock. We've also got a competition coming up at 11 o'clock. What I'm going to do just now is to tell you about this day in British history. A very interesting character was born, and this will really possibly annoy some of the BLM people and the Scottish nationalists, because it was on this day that Charles Pasley was born. Now this is the child who has been credited. He was born in Eskdale Muir in Dumfriesshire, and he has been credited, wait for this, with, quote, creating the idea of the British Empire. This was a Scotsman who became one of the main, if not the main ideological thinker behind the rise of the British Empire post-American Revolution. So you're talking post 1783 through the 19th century, for about the next 100 years, actually. And it's because he wrote the defining text on the British Empire entitled An Essay on the Military Policy and Institutions of the British Empire, published in 1810. And this changed how Britons thought of their empire and how it should relate to the rest of the world. And he warned that if Britain wanted to keep it, it would have to continue to expand it. Okay? Not decrease it, but in fact build it, and if necessary, fight for it. So he was quite a character. That's Charles Pasley, and I'll bring up a picture of him here. And let me bring up Charles Pasley. That's a picture of him there. General Sir Charles William Pasley, called the man who created the idea of the British Empire, a Scotsman born in Eskdalemuir, who wrote the defining text. Charles Pasley, Pasley. Now, down at the bottom of this infographic there's a quote from Raj Pal, who's the Oxfordshire County Heritage and Arts Officer, at least he was back in 2013. And I saw this quote from this Indian fellow back in 2013 at the Kelvin Grove Art Gallery, and I took a photograph of it. And I like what he says here. He says, "I have long been amused by the romanticised and misplaced sense of modern Scottish nationalism. It comes as no surprise to me that Scottish officers were in the vanguard of putting down the Indian Rebellion. Given the sheer number of Scots in power at the dizzy heights of the empire, no wonder Indian historians often refer to the British Empire as really the Scottish Empire. Scots as an oppressed nation don't make me laugh." What a fantastic quote that is. Oh, a fantastic quote. So we juxtaposed that we put it in with that infographic about Charles Pasley, the Scotsman who, quote, created the idea of the British Empire, close quote. And it was Arthur Herman who came up with that description for Pasley. Good stuff, good stuff. Alan, we're definitely a stronger, more prosperous together. Morning, Alistair. Ipox Park says he's late for class. Well, we like to help people, learn about our great Scottish and British history and how it all comes together. That's a great thing that we like doing. I'm glad you appreciate that, Ibrox Park. Good. Well, at the top of the hour, we've got James coming up. That's in a couple of minutes. But what I'm going to do just now is ask the question for the prize. Now, if you can answer this question, then please send in your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk, and the first person who answers the question that I'm about to ask will get this tin of sweets. It says "God Save the Queen" across it. Tin of sweets, fruit sweets. They're really nice. I've had them. This will be winging its way to you in the mail this afternoon for the first person to answer correctly the question: what was the name, or at least the surname, of the Scotsman who, quote, created the idea of the British Empire? What was the name of that person? First person who gets the answer in there at contact@forceforgood will get this sent to them today. Great stuff. Now, we're going to have to leave our viewers on TikTok, I'm afraid, because we're now going over to our guest, and you won't be able to see or hear the guest on TikTok. But if you'd like to continue to watch, go to either our Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube page, which is UK A Force for Good, and you'll be able to continue to watch this broadcast up until we finish at 11:30. So thank you to everybody on TikTok. You've been great. Thanks for your comments that have been coming in. Great stuff there. Thank you, folks on TikTok. Now, let me just remove the TikTok camera. And let's go over to our guest, who is James. Folks, James is a very thoughtful, very intelligent British patriot, and going to bring him on just now. Please welcome James to the programme. Hello, James.
Hi, Alistair. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well indeed. Thank you so much for coming in today. And I love your background, by the way. You've got a copy of Union Heart that we sent you,
Mhm.
and you've also got our wee card,
Yes.
which is our Union Jacks at the Kelpies. That's really nice. Thanks very much for that.
Well, thanks for sending them to me. I
Yes,
really like them.
good, good. Well, Frankie says, welcome, James. Tommy says, hello, James. So, James, I briefly introduced you there as somebody who has found a force for good. Could you just maybe give the viewers some kind of background into how you ended up at a force for good? You know, what was the what led you to our door, as it were?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for letting me appear on the show, and hi to everyone at home. Um, I came across a Force for Good just randomly on YouTube about a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and instantly it appealed to me because it was very positive and very uplifting. And you have the heart as your logo, and it's just very infectious. Your patriotism and your your eagerness to put out positive messages in a sort of climate of negativity, and it's very good.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. Well, we like to do that because too often, especially in politics, you can one can get brought down by everything that's going on, but you have to have faith in what you believe in and realize that that's where the good lies, and just continue to push it out. But you must have had some concern about the way the country was going to have sought us out in the first place. Is that correct?
Yeah, of course. There is the union at risk basically, and Force for Good is obviously pro-union, and that's a good thing for the entire country, not just Scotland, England, but for all of the home nations of our union. Now more than ever.
Well, absolutely, absolutely, indeed, indeed. Um, do you find? I mean, you live down in England. Um, do you find that people in England have much of an awareness of the union and the importance of the union? Or, I mean, up here in Scotland, that's the whole debate.
Right.
The whole political debate. What's it? How's that seen in England, or at least in your circles, and as far
Yeah.
as you can see it, looking from your perspective in the south of England?
Honestly, it's not a big sort of issue here. But we never talk about the risk of the union being dissolved. It's not spoken about often in the media or amongst people, um, and I think the English are not aware of just how much of a risk there is out there from the SNP and all those who back the SNP, because they have quite powerful backers and financial strength and media presence. And another reason is I think that a lot of people in England take the union for granted, just because it's been around for 400 years. Um, they just never think it's going to break up, and like I say, the media never broadcasts that risk to us. And also, I think people are quite scared to talk out. If they do feel like there is a risk to the union breaking up, I feel like uh, a lot of people may feel too scared to speak out for fear of losing their job or being attacked or having an angry mob turn up at their doorstep. And also feel like there's a lack of education about history in general.
Mm.
Um, so people are sort of, don't mean to be rude, but people are a little bit ignorant and they don't understand history, so they don't appreciate just how precious history is. For instance, something that I noticed last year in 2020 during the whole rioting thing and people attacking monuments. For me, that was a turning point that made me think, God, I really do need to get involved here because they're attacking history and monuments. And I remember I was watching the news, and there was an Englishman on the news who they were interviewing him, saying, "Oh, what do you think about all these people trying to pull down statues and those who are protecting statues?" And he just referred to the people who protected statues as statue people, and that is missing the argument entirely. Those people are ex-war veterans, and they're protecting our history, our heritage, our way of life, and the honour of this country. And it's just that the normal man on the street that isn't aware of such significance, and it's a lack of education, unfortunately.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the people who tear the statues down, they are aware, or at least they're got some kind of consciousness about the importance of that from their perspective. But for most of us just trying to go about our daily life, as you've said there, the importance of where we've come from and how we got here doesn't really occur to them. And if they try to maybe get explanations, they'll often get explanations from people who want to tear all that stuff down anyway, because they don't like the past. But that was certainly a wake-up call for me as well last year, when I realised that our political establishment didn't have the words really to properly defend the statues. And indeed, a big wake-up call for me as well was when the Churchill statue got defaced with the word racist, and Boris Johnson, who lives 200 yards up the road, said nothing for about a week, when in fact he should have been down there that night with a megaphone, defending Churchill's honour. After all, Boris Johnson has written a biography of Churchill, so the silence from our establishment was deafening. And it wasn't just me that picked that up. Lots of people on Twitter were like, "Oh, for crying out loud, we're on our own here." And then tentatively over the next weeks, some politicians would come out and say things, but the rot has gone pretty deep in the established institutions, and that's why they caved so easily to all of this BLM stuff, which is just kind of nonsense, really. One good thing, if we're trying to find good things, is that it has woken up people to understand the importance of history and heritage. Some people have got organised to do it. One very good thing, of course, as well, was last summer there was an attempt by a group of people supporting BLM to attack the statues in George Square. George Square is a great British civic space in the centre of Glasgow with lots of statues. And fantastically, hundreds of people from throughout Glasgow rose up to defend them and sent the BLM supporters homeward to think again. So that was very good. And so there are good things that come out of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, why do you think you're different in some way to have found us? Because obviously you care about these political issues. You care about the union. I mean, have you asked yourself why maybe you care in a way that maybe your peers are not so bothered about?
Again, unfortunately, I think it comes down to a lack of education and appreciation of history. Because I often ask my friends and family, why, we discuss these political matters and the importance of union, and they just like, oh, that union will be around forever. The British will never give that up. That's amazing deal for everyone. So that's the sort of response I get. But I know that that's not the case, especially because of organisations such as yourself who are showing us the dangers of like Sturgeon and the EU, which I was aware of already. But obviously you highlight things and to a broader spectrum of people, not just to myself. So you're getting the message out to everybody, just how the sort of dangerous that organisation is. And again, I think people in England just take it for granted, and that's perhaps one of the most dangerous things you can do, because if you take something for granted, it can be taken away from you quite easily.
Absolutely. For a nation no nation has a right to exist forever. Nations only exist to the extent that the people of that nation want it to continue to exist and continue to do things to ensure it exists. Otherwise, that nation will collapse. And people, you allude to it quite clearly there, people don't think things are just around forever, but they're not. And it was Neil Oliver who, here's my wee book here, I'm just going to get his quote, and I'll read it out again because it is so correct. He says, "Great Britain has been here so long it can be easy to think it just happened, a work of nature like a mountain or an ancient tree. The truth is, it was ever a fragile thing. Union is a dream shared by a people and kept real only by their imagination and conviction. If we neglect to maintain it, the temple will fall, all of it will be destroyed, and so the work of centuries will be undone." That's Neil Oliver who said that, and we've quoted it. He said it in the Sunday Times Scotland back on the 1st of May 2016. 1st of May being Union Day in 1707. So yes, you have to do. It's not enough to believe. You have to do, as they say. And so you're doing, and people like you are doing, and you've become a union supporter, which is to say you're one of the people that help monthly to keep our efforts going here. And I do want to thank you very much for that.
It's my pleasure.
Aye, cheers. How do you have any ideas how we could help the British to love their country again? Any kind of things that you'd like to see the government or others doing?
Yeah, I find that the only people who hate Britain are the British. If you speak to people from abroad, like online chat forums, whatever, language exchange or cultural exchange, foreigners have a very, very strong positive view of Britain and the flag and everything. So I just wanted to mention that, the only people who hate Britain are the British and those who are, have hidden agendas that seek to do us harm.
It's a good point. And George Orwell made that point, didn't he? When he spoke about how the English, he was talking about English particularly, and he talked about English intellectuals, and how much they seem to hate their own country, which puzzled him, I think. Although, as you know, Orwell was a complicated character. But it's a good point. There's the Union flag, for example, has massive cachet throughout the world, and it gets printed on designs worldwide. People love it. They want to come to the United Kingdom. They want to see all our heritage. That's one of the reasons they come here, is to see Buckingham Palace, it's to see the statues, it's to see the monuments, it's to see the museums, it's to see this rich cultural heritage. So important, especially in London. London gets a lot of tourism, and it's all kind of heritage based in many, many ways. And for anybody to try to attack that, or to try to think that should all be changed and turned upside down, is really perverse. It's economically perverse, if nothing else. Even if you don't care about the heritage, it's economically perverse to try to attack London's heritage. And of course, I'm kind of alluding here to the mayor of London at the present moment, who doesn't seem to see the importance of maintaining British heritage. Yeah, absolutely.
But you mentioned how, to answer your question though, because I went off track a bit, how can we make the British love Britain again? Well, we should revive and we should proliferate British culture, customs and traditions, such as traditional music and traditional dance and festivals. Those things have really fallen from the public consciousness, and the government doesn't want to revive these things, but they're very important for a sense of national identity and unity. So I think we need to, or someone needs to, bring back tradition and custom around Britain. And also we should reform the educational system as well, because I feel like students adult students and even children are becoming indoctrinated to hate this country and to take on points of view that are quite extreme at such a young age. We should we should foster sort of patriotism and a love for the country and a want to support our country from a young age in the educational system. And finally, we should elect politicians who love this country and love the British people, because at the moment I don't see any politicians who love this country and love the British people, and that's a shame.
Yes, exactly. I know what you mean. And you talked there about education. And yesterday I saw a report on the internet. It was a councillor in Oldham had said what we need to do is we need to encourage the schools in Oldham to fly the Union flag, to sing the national anthem, and to teach about British history.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, why does that even need to be said? You know, it's so tragic that needs to be said.
It should be mandatory.
It should be mandatory, and if the government or the local councils don't make it mandatory, then what it is and what is possible is for schools or private institutions to do that anyway. You know, and to fly the flag outside your school, that's not a controversial thing to do. To sing the national anthem, or to even teach the national anthem is not a controversial thing to do. To teach about British history is not a controversial thing to do. So we can all do those things, even if the system, even if the government, even if you're living in a situation where the council is totally opposed to that, you can still do things privately, or you can still do things in your school, or you can still do things in whatever institution that you might be part of.
And that council should be voted out.
Well, yes, and the councillors who are against such things should be voted.
And people can do little. Sorry, Alistair. People can do little things. Just a local community. Someone distributes leaflets or emails, or whatever, and everyone goes down to the local church. Even if you're not religious, they've got facilities there. They've got hall. They've got a massive hall or parking space. Just get everyone around and from the community. Just say, look, we're going to get together. You know, food and drink, music, dancing, and just come together. That is really lacking, I think. It's not just in Britain, but in Western society generally. We're drifting apart. We need to sort of come together from the local community level upwards. And simple things, just gathering like that, you feel such a connection to your community and to your fellow countrymen.
That's so true. And in the society has become atomized, and even 50 years ago there were far more local community groups and local events happening throughout towns and cities, and there was much more of a structure among the people at the grassroots. And what has happened, I don't know quite why, but there'll be economic reasons and social and cultural reasons, but society has atomized, and those sorts of social gatherings have gone away. Those sorts of social institutions have decreased, and the political consequences of that is that people find themselves alone and fearing that they're the only people who think these things, whereas if they were organised in other ways, then they wouldn't feel so alone, they wouldn't feel so atomized. And that's such an important point, and it's one of the reasons why things are happening in the Western world right now that wouldn't have happened even 30 years ago. You know, these lockdowns, stuff like that. If social institutions had been a lot stronger just now, the system couldn't have done that. 30 years ago, they couldn't have done that. You know, unions would have been out on the street striking, women's institutes, churches, all that sort of thing. People would be talking, arguing, and there would be much more of a resistance to what's going on throughout the Western world.
And of course, that's being discouraged by the establishment, the elite, whatever, people who run the country, the government. They're actively clamping down on such discussions. They're trying to clamp down on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of political affiliation, and freedom to assemble. They're just clamping down year after year after year, eroding our rights, thus making these gatherings of like-minded people virtually impossible. Especially now with the virus, which is a whole other subject. they're just using that as yet another reason to deprive people of basic human rights.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes. James, you've got so much to say on lots of things, I know, so we would definitely have you back on again. But that 20 minutes went so quickly there, essentially.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
thank you for coming on, and we will have you back. And folks, do thank James there for his stuff. That's great to find a new guest who's happy to come on and share your wisdom with us. So James, all the best to you, and we'll speak shortly, no doubt. Take care.
take care, mate. Thanks for having me on. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Good stuff. That was James, who's a new union supporter for A Force for Good from down in England. Thank you very much, James, for your thoughts there. Alan says thanks, James, as does Tommy, as does Bill. Great, James. And Richard says thank you, James. Yes, union supporter. A union supporter. If you'd like to be a union supporter from as little as £1.15 a week, that works out as £5 a month, then please do sign up. We'll put the link up there in the various on the various pages, because it's the union supporters which really keep us going. We want to find 50 new union supporters this year. We've found 24 so far, and we're going to keep going until we find what we need. And they help us to do all our stuff, such as, for example, our upcoming event on the 25th at the Smurfs annual outing, which will be the Scottish nationalists marching, or rather slouching, down the Royal Mile. And we'll be there to welcome them to the great United Kingdom. And here's a picture of us last time around on the Royal Mile on the 5th of October 2019. Now, this is a new greetings card which we have produced, and it's blank inside, and on the back it has got our heart, and it says, "A Force for Good's thin red lines stand up for the United Kingdom on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh on Saturday the 5th of October 2019. And we've also got another greetings card, which is A Force for Good on Union Street in Glasgow. And that was on the 11th of January in 2020. So, how many folk are likely to be there on the 25th of September? Well, the biggest number that the Scottish nationalists have ever had at a march was back in Edinburgh in October 2018, and that was almost 13,000 that they had. We counted them in exactly at 12,789. So they certainly won't get that this time, because there's been all sorts of fallouts under they all under one banner people. They're not so all under one banner anymore, so there won't be anything like that, but we're expecting there'll be sufficient to make it worth our while to head over there to Edinburgh. So if you're in Edinburgh, if you know people who are, please do contact us, keep in touch with us, and we'll make sure you are in the loop as far as all that activity is concerned. Frankie says, love it. Derek sends some cards, some flags there. Tommy says, thank you for your views, James. Good to hear an English perspective. And Frankie says, thank you, James. Well said. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, who won our competition? We have got a winner. Let me just say who has won here. Let me type it in. a worthy winner. Here we go. Now, the question was, on this day, who was born back on the 8th of September in 1780, and who was born in Eskdale Muir in Dumfriesshire, and has been credited by historians as, quote, the man who created the idea of the British Empire? Well, the answer was Charles Pasley, and we had several people who have come in with the correct answer. However, it's this man who has won. Tommy Mowat, congratulations. You're the proud owner of this tin of sweeties, which will be winging its way to you. Now, Tommy, please could you just use that same email and tell us your address, and we'll get this in the post to you by close of play today. Congratulations to Tommy for winning the God Save the Queen sweeties. It's been a great show today, folks. Thank you very much for all your comments. We've been on TikTok as well, so we've been broadcasting on 4 platforms: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook and TikTok. TikTok is going well. We've got a great team. We've got a great TikTok curator. We've got a great Facebook team who help us do this show today, and who help us also on others who help on Twitter and on YouTube. So thank you to them all, and thank you as well to our political outreach man, who's going to be very busy very shortly, because we're producing an amazing magazine which he's going to be sending to lots of people. Guy says, I was there with AFFG in 2019 March. It was my first one and it was great. Felt part of something really important and worthwhile. Fantastic. Fantastic. That's what we love to hear. And hope to see you again on the Saturday the 25th of September. Guy. We'll keep in touch with you about that. Marjorie says, thanks for all you do. Frankie says, excellent. Bill says, better than the British Broadcasting Corporation. That wouldn't be difficult, as they say. Paul says, take care, Alistair. Well, take care yourself as well, Paul. And anything that I need to say, let me just check my notes in case I've missed something important that I need to say today. Yeah, just to finish on the magazine. The magazine's going great. The next edition of Union Heart, it's going to be 40 pages. We thought it was going to be 36 pages. It's actually going to be 40 pages. And that'll be coming out in the autumn. We've started graphic designing on it, so it shouldn't take too long to get it to the printers. So that's free of charge to everybody who is a union supporter, who's a monthly donor. We'll probably have to charge a £5 for it for everybody else, but that's free of charge to everybody who's a union supporter. And this will be the man, our political outreach fellow, will get that out as well to politicians and so on. It's a special bumper edition, and it's about policies to keep the United Kingdom together, and it's going to be called Do More Together, because that's the way you build bonds. Social, political, cultural, economic. You do more together and the bond gets built. Alan says, looking forward to the mag. Absolutely. So folks, thanks for joining us today. Take care and see you all next week from the AFFG team. It just remains for me to say God bless the United Kingdom and God save the Queen. See you next week.